This video is the Bible and science are buddies. They're closely aligned. They are not clashing. They are in harmony. And I'm not going to start with Isaac Newton, even though he's recognized as one of the leading, most famous of modern scientists, because I already have a video up about him. People want to say, well, he was maybe a theist, but he was actually a Bible-believing Christian. He maybe wrote more about the Bible than science. And he also affirmed that Jesus is to be God the Son. And I traced that. I wrote to Cambridge University for that page and so on and so forth. It's a long story. They wanted money and they wanted to control what I would do with their... imagine buying a painting from an artist and the person saying, yeah, but you can buy this for so much, but you must keep it only personal in your own room. You can never take a picture of it and all this kind of thing. Well, anyway, I talk about that in the video about Isaac Newton. But I'm not going to start with Isaac Newton. Let's start with someone else. Specifically, let's start with Matthew Fontaine Maury, the, quote, Pathfinder of the Seas. In his book, Physical Geography of the Seas, 1855, he wrote, quote, listen, the Bible called the earth the round world, yet for ages it was the most damnable heresy for Christian men to say that the world is round. Finally, sailors circumnavigated the globe and proved the Bible to be right, and saved Christian men of science from the stake. And I give the reference there where that's from, United Presbyterian Magazine and so on. Well, Paul, don't even non-Christian religions also have wonderful wisdom in them and so on? I haven't found it. For example, in the Vedas, which is the law of the Hindus, and I put that in quotation because different people spell Hindu different ways. But here's the quotation. Now, is this wonderful wisdom? Actually, it's ridiculous. Now listen, the moon is 50,000 leagues higher than the sun. Well, we know that the sun is very much further away from the earth than the moon. Anyway, continuing the quotation, and the moon shines by its own light. That's false. The moon reflects the sun's light. And then continuing, quote, night is caused by the sun's setting behind a huge mountain several thousand feet high located in the center of the earth. Can you believe that? The sun is in the center of the earth. It's nonsense. But the Bible and science are buddies, and you're going to see that. And then it says, speaking of the earth, that this world, flat and triangular, is composed of 7 states. One of honey, another of sugar, a third of butter, and still another of wine, and the whole is borne on the heads of countless elephants, which in shaking produce earthquakes. And I give the reference where that quotation is found. Well, doesn't the Bible also give sort of conflicting things with science and all that? Well, let's read Job 26:7. It says there, he, speaking of God, stretches out the north over empty space. He hangs the earth on nothing. The Bible was centuries before modern science, but today we see pictures of earth hanging on nothing. Was the Bible inspired by God? Most assuredly. In Isaiah 40, we read, he, speaking of God, sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. How can a revelation from 2,700 years ago reveal that the earth was a circle or even sphere? It's because the Bible and science are buddies. But Paul, what about atoms? Well, Hebrews 11 says that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Did the Bible know the force that holds atoms together? Of course. Colossians 1 says that Jesus, quote, is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Come on, Paul. You don't really believe that Jesus is the creator of heavens and earth, do you? Yes. Now it's my turn to ask a question. You don't really believe that a mindless explosion somewhere back when created the heavens and the earth, plants and animals, do you? If you object, and I'm speaking maybe to an atheist, that may be one who claims to be an atheist, who may be listening to this video, certainly not everyone. If you object to intelligence being behind creation, what about non-intelligence? You think fruit flies, roses, and whales mindlessly just happen given enough time? Paul, the Bible seems to know nothing of Darwin's genius, quote-unquote, notion that things have come from less complex to more complex via evolution. Elephants came ultimately from bacteria or some early life form. But true science actually shows that things increase in disorder, not from simple to complex, but from complex to simple. It's called the law of increasing entropy, or the second law of thermodynamics. The Bible wholeheartedly affirms the idea, the notion that things are running down. For example, in Isaiah 51 we read, "The earth will wear out like a garment, and they who dwell in it will die in like manner." Psalm 102 says that they will all wear out like a garment, you will change them like a robe, and they will pass away. The Bible also knew about the water cycle. Long before modern scientists talked about it, it says, and I'm quoting from Ecclesiastes, quote, "All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, there they return again." 10 chapters later it says that if the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. Amos 9 says, "He calls for the waters of the sea." That's evaporation from the sea, and pours them out upon the face of the earth. That's the water cycle. Well, what about the wind cycle? The cycles of wind. Here it is, Ecclesiastes also. "The wind goes toward the south and turns about unto the north. It whirls about continually, and the wind returns again according to his circuits." What about sanitation? Did the Bible know about that? You know, the fact, wash your hands when you go to a restaurant, you go into the bathroom and it says wash your hands, and especially employees and stuff like that. Yes, the Bible taught sanitation long before its value was recognized. Here's a quotation from Deuteronomy. "Designate a place outside the camp where you can go to relieve yourself. As part of your equipment, have something to dig with, and when you relieve yourself, dig a hole and cover up your excrement." Well, isn't that sort of crass, Paul? I mean, we like toilets and everything. Yeah, well, they didn't have toilets back then. We advanced from generation to generation and so on. But that was a wonderful revelation, not to try to bury, your excrement and among other things, it maybe tends to fertilize the ground, and all the animals and bugs and worms and everything in the ground somehow can recycle everything. It's beyond me. But there it is in Deuteronomy, teaching sanitation. Now, what about wisdom concerning disease protection? There's a picture maybe on the door of some hospital room where it says, all staff and visitors stop. You've got to have gowns and gloves are required, and so on and so forth. This is very possibly a sign to warn people that the patient in the room has MRSA, which is a dangerous disease. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus is what those letters mean, MRSA. The Bible quote, here's a quotation. The person with such a disease must wear torn clothes. Let his hair be unkempt. In other words, communicating, be careful, don't get too close to me. Cover the lower part of his face and cry out, unclean. Maybe the idea of covering the lower part of the face so you don't breathe out so other people can inhale what you're breathing out. If there's a covering over the mouth, it tends to inhibit that. And the person is to cry, unclean, unclean. As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone. He must live outside the camp. That's what Leviticus 13 says. There's wisdom in that. We don't want diseases to be communicated from one person to another. That doesn't mean that the person outside the camp, no one can bring food or whatever, temporarily at least, until the person gets better. And today we know that some diseases need to be quarantined. We maybe don't tear clothes, but we warn in other ways, placing warning on hospital doors and so on. In the 17th century, it was decided that bloodletting was not a good medical practice. Some people were of the opinion, look at that man letting his blood into a bowl or something. The idea was that, there's maybe poison in the blood, let's empty the bottle of all that poison or whatever. But it was the 17th century where it was decided that that was not a good practice. But notice what Leviticus 17 says. It doesn't talk about bloodletting. It says, the life of the flesh is in the blood. If doctors obeyed that, instead of letting blood out, kept it in the body, I think that George Washington was bled, and he died very possibly as a result of this practice. It's very sad. If they had kept the blood in his body, the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. Pouring out blood, you're making the patient weaker and so on. So the Bible was way ahead of its time. When you go and give blood at a blood drive place, it'll say, give blood. And that's good. That's right in harmony with Leviticus 17. The life of the flesh is in the blood. Give life, give blood. Help a person that's in need of blood and so on. New York State, this is 2019, and New York State this year celebrated the killing of unborn humans up until their very date of birth. In other words, a baby full 9 months is allowed to be put to death. Our society in America is imploding. We deny the preciousness of human life in the womb. We'll protect animals. Don't you dare do a bad thing to a dog or whatever. And I love dogs myself. But you can kill a human. Don't kill an egg, an eagle's egg, in the nest. But you can kill a human even up to the point of delivery. Very sad. Anyone who does not recognize this, that is sick, is blind. Not too long ago, doctors would wash their hands in basins of still water. But Leviticus 15, much better than that, those doctors, it says, and when he that has an issue is cleansed of his issue, Then he shall number to himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. In other words, not in a water basin and so on, running water in a river or maybe a fountain of some kind, a stream or something. The Bible and true science are buddies. Okay, Paul, let's talk dinosaurs. Don't they disprove the Bible? No, they don't. Just the opposite. The Bible talks about dinosaurs. You say, well, I've looked it up in the word dinosaur. That's because the word dinosaur wasn't invented until about 1840, 41 or something. But it does talk about dinosaurs. Listen to this. Behold now behemoth. That's what the animal was called. The word dinosaur was not invented, as I said, until much later. Behold now behemoth, which I made with you. He eats grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moves his tail like a cedar. Do you see the picture of the cedar of Lebanon down there at the bottom? That's a beautiful, huge tree. And the tail of this animal was like cedar. The sinews of his thighs are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. You've maybe seen the bones of dinosaurs in museums. And they look like bars of iron. He is the chief. In fact, we even call Tyrannosaurus Rex, which means king or something. So he is, and quoting from Job, he is chief, or think Rex, of the ways of God. In other words, the Bible is with it. You say, oh, wait a minute, Paul. Dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. Man wasn't even around there, so it's all nonsense. Wrong. We have just recently, Dr. Mary Schweitzer in 2005 put out an article where she has uncovered soft, flexible tissue from dinosaur bones. Actually, I think it was a Tyrannosaurus Humber bone. And that would be unbelievable if the animal were really 65 million years ago. The chronology of evolutionism is crazy. There's so many scientific reasons for affirming a young Earth. The soft, flexible tissue is just one of them. Also, dinosaur bones have a lot of carbon in them, and they've been tested. And they're not millions of years, they're only thousands of years old. You say, well, are there many other? Yes, there's a lot of other evidence. Write me, I'll share, I'll give you many, many more reasons that the Earth is not anywhere near the age that evolutionists want to brainwash you into seeing. You know, kindergarten books will start this way. Millions of years ago. It's like a mantra. It's brainwashing. Now there's a picture of Richard Dawkins. And actually there's a Pocono nose on him. I didn't put it there. I came up on Google Images. But it's good because he's got a book out called The God Delusion. In other words, he's saying that God doesn't really exist. Well, that's a lie. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart there is no God. So actually Richard Dawkins is a fool according to the Bible. And I actually have corresponded with him a number of times. I maybe have, I don't know how many emails from him. Probably at least 6, 7, or 8 or whatever. I don't know. And I can share you, if you write me, I can let you know more about that if you want. But let's move on. People of old used to make idols and said that they were gods. It's just as bad today. We make an idea or evolution and bow to a mere human thought. At least the Baal worshippers had something to see. Yahweh, quote, saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Imagine saying that there are 15 sexes, and boys should be able to go in girls' bathrooms and stuff. It's nonsense. labeling as peaceful a religion that converts by the sword. It's very sad. And pontificating like Dawkins that God does not exist. It's nonsense. He's lying. He knows down deep in his heart that God exists, but he's just lying about it. You say, how do you know that, Paul? Well, read Romans chapter 1. God himself has made himself known to Richard Dawkins, but he's willing to lie that there is no God. Okay, I hear what you say. Now it's your turn to smack. It's our turn to smack you down. Trillions of fossils all over the earth scream big time, millions of years, Bible chronology is off. That's easy to answer. Trillions of fossils. I agree that there are trillions of fossils all over the earth. But they don't scream big time, they scream big flood. 1 year in duration. Bible chronology is really right on. Animals died in churning mud that became fossils over hundreds and thousands of years. Animals dying today rarely become entombed in mud and do not turn into fossils. Birds pick the meat off their flesh, bacteria, throw it into the ocean, it falls, and crabs get it, and so on and so forth. It just doesn't form. You don't see fossil graveyards being formed today, but a global flood makes sense. Fake science is dead. The Bible and true science are indeed true buddies. Now, at the beginning, I referred to Newton's faith, one of the world's greatest scientists. If you'd like to watch that video, you're welcome to. It's called Isaac Newton and the Trinity.